Welcome back, everybody. Kentucky is now 8-1, fresh off of top seven ranked win over Gonzaga in Seattle. One that they're calling a neutral game. I would love to argue that exactly that it's a road game. I got the stats. I'll bring them up in a second about how far away it is. Kentucky traveled over 2,400 miles to get to this game, almost past Seattle, almost past Spokane along the way where Gonzaga plays at. Gonzaga traveled, I forget, like 200 something miles. It's only like 4 hours. We were over 35 hours. But for some reason, we're still getting credited for a neutral game, even though it's not at Gonzaga. I understand what they're saying, but I don't agree. Going to have to give me a little bit more explanation or give us some credit on that. Anyways, it was an overtime thriller. I think it was a 90-89 finish. We did it without our starting point guard, Lamont Butler, and a backup point guard, Kirk Kriisa. And man, after an awful first half, the Mark Pope adjustments at halftime fulfilled a win. Michael, let's toss it to you. What was that like for you? Were you? I know I don't think any of us traveled there, but I know I was up in front of my TV, 2 feet planted on the ground at 12:15 at night, yelling and screaming. How was your experience watching the game?
Oh, it was a great sports night because you had championship Saturday, right? So the ACC title game, Big Ten title game, and that game. So we had like two different TVs going, and but like we were bouncing back and forth. It was wild. It was a great night. I thought after that first half, you could have turned the game off really like that. I thought they were cooked. That first half was pretty ugly. They just couldn't really find any offense. And I feel like they just I was talking to you guys about Jackson Robinson, man. You need Jackson to get going, and he finally got some things rolling, and to play most of that game without a point guard was pretty impressive. So you got to give him credit, man. That was guts. It took a lot of guts. You got 2 top 10 neutral site wins. You avoid going 0-2 that week, which would have been a really bad kind of like little dip in the mood for Kentucky basketball fans. So they're happy again.
Timo, what about you?
I'm gonna be honest, man. My bad, Mike. I'm gonna be honest, man. I was one of those guys that was getting ready to go to bed at halftime. I thought it was gonna be a blowout. I did not think there was any way Kentucky was gonna come back in this. I knew Pope was gonna make his adjustments and everything, but it set an 18-point lead at one point, and they had all the momentum in the world. I forget the big guy's name, Ike.
Yeah,
for Gonzaga. Yeah, he was working us. I thought there was no way we were going to come back in that game. But checked my phone probably after 15 minutes, saw that it was like 8-point game. I was like, oh, I got to turn this back on now. I got to get up, got to turn this back on. And I'm sure glad I did. That's for sure.
Yeah, Tim, I'm the sicko that so it was going into halftime, and I was with some friends watching it, and I just said, I remember telling him, like, we're cooked. Michael's term, cooked. We're going to lose this game. I just said, I told you all last week, if without Lamont Butler, I don't expect us to win. And he was game time decision, didn't suit up. I was like, this is going to be bad. And I didn't expect the first half to be that bad. That got down 16 and a half. And I was like, we're not coming back to second half. I'm the sicko that sits there and puts a little money on them at halftime when I don't think that we're going to come back. It's just, I don't have a good explanation for it. But anyways, Kentucky comes back and they start off on a run. I'm not sure what run they went on to start that second half. But that was, I think Corey Price put out a stat. That was the largest deficit at halftime that Kentucky's ever came back in program history. Now they get the Mardi Gras one, and for the LSU game, it was like 30-something points. In the second half that they came back with this at halftime was the largest deficit in program history. Major. I could not believe that they pulled that off, and to do it with, Kirk Kriisa went out, and you all saw that play when he got injured and still went back on defense. And to me, it just they said cramps, and that's what it looked like, to be honest with you. But now we know, as news has came out, that he's got the Jones fracture where he's going to have likely surgery. Jeff Goodman, who's coming on the show tonight, is going to be out he says he's going to be out 3 to 6 weeks. The school hasn't put that out, but Jeff put that out earlier. And then your starting point guard, Lamont Butler. He tweaked his ankle. We talked about that at Clemson, and I think all of us have been victims of doing that. You're playing sports, and you just fall on the side of your foot, and, the next night it swells up like the size of a baseball, softball. A couple of days out, you can't really walk, but it's just a short-term injury. And Mark Pope tonight's Monday night. Mark Pope just got doing his radio show with Tom Leach, and he gave us a status. It's really nice to get statuses now about injured players. He said that Lamont Butler's day today. He didn't practice in physical activity today, but will tomorrow. Likely they're going to have a lot better feel tomorrow at practice on Tuesday. And quote, he said, we feel like he'll be back sooner than later, that he's day to day. So that's a positive news. That's kind of what we expected. I didn't think there's going to be long term, but got to have your starting point guard back. And on Wednesday night, they played 2-8 Colgate. So it's not a rush to get him back. I think they're saying that he could be back for that. But then you got Louisville on Saturday. Not that I'm worried about the outcome of Louisville, but for once, it feels like they're going to keep it a competitive that we've not been used to in years with that game. So I'd say if he's not 90% or better, there's really no reason bringing him back. Keep him out for Louisville. You're going to win this game by 15+ minimum without him. So, going forward, you want to have him back, but I don't think you need him just yet.
Yeah, and I think it's, some good practice for Jackson to run the point a little bit more because, going to that game, I think me, you, Michael, I don't know about you, Trace, but we really didn't have that much confidence in Jackson possibly running the ball. I know we possibly said that Ortega was an option, but didn't really see that as well. But it just kind of seemed like Jackson, whenever he would be pressed, he would pick up his dribble and have to force it off. So him running the point didn't really make too much sense, but he proved us wrong against Gonzaga, that's for sure, in that second half.
Yeah.
Well, and he just got buckets. Here, am I good?
Yeah, you're good.
Mike messing up?
We hear some feedback, so I'm muting you whenever Trace and I are talking, but that's fine.
You're still hearing it now?
Yeah.
My bad. I'm not in my normal Fox 56 studio. I took today off, so yeah, sorry guys. But yeah, man, at the end of the day, he's just getting buckets too, right? That's what we were talking about last week on the pod. He's got to be that fourth guy that can just go out there and get you buckets. You got Ortega and Amari and Lamont really when he's healthy. So without him, that's even tougher, right? So you really need Jackson. So he stepped up. You got to give him credit. I think they still got to work on their free throw shooting, right? Still got to work on some interior defense stuff and, finding ways to score when they're not hitting their threes. What was their 3-point line?
I got the stats right here. So Kentucky at the 3-pointer, they went 7 for 25. Is that our 4th game in a row with the 3-pointers not falling? That's starting to become a little issue.
Yeah, I mean, but they found other ways. They got gritty. They played some defense. I think the run was 16-2, right? Wasn't that the run, or 16-4 maybe? But
sounds like it.
Really impressive run, and that's what happened in the Duke game. They kind of put on the clamps. Cooper Flagg was still getting buckets in the second half. Obviously, they put the clamps on him at the end of the game, but he was still getting buckets. But really, not a lot of guys were getting buckets. Kind of Knippel kind of struggled there late. So the defense is looking good, looking better than maybe they've looked at times. So that's something they got to rely on. And then I don't know. I feel like, yeah, I agree with you. Lamont doesn't have to play Wednesday, but he should play Saturday against Louisville. And give Jackson another game to just kind of run the point. Let the whole offense kind of figure out how to go without a point guard, because they said it's not season ending, but who knows, man? If there's a setback, that could be a really long injury. So you got to get ready to play without him. And even when Lamont's getting rest, you need somebody out there that can run the point.
Yeah, I mean, one myself would argue that Lamont Butler, I mean, it's not a crazy thing to say, is you need him the most out of almost anybody on this team long term. If you want to do something in March, I know it needs to be Jackson Robinson, and maybe you can make a great argument for it. But I'm going to argue right now that Lamont Butler is the most valuable piece on this team that you need if you want to get what you want in March. And I didn't feel that way before Clemson. I really, we mentioned last week, it really set in for me that he's that guy that we watched hit a Final Four game winner to send him to the title game. It's got that dog in him and really showed he created a lot of value in my point of view watching him at Clemson. And I know it's kind of ironic that we still got the win without him, but I think that was just a lot of momentum. A lot of things were going in our favor, and halftime adjustments. Kentucky hit him with a 1-3-1 defense. Finally, Joby Hall begged for that for years, and we never got it. But I think, one play, the game after he passed away, Joby Hall, and we played Tennessee at home. That was a great day to kind of honor Joby Hall. But other than that, it's finally great to see those halftime adjustments, the same as we saw at Duke. Halftime adjustments, and you saw 2 different ball games. I hate that we had to get down that far, but I think Mark Pope said something in his press conference of like, what we were doing was not working. We had to try something different. And thank you. That's all we're asking. Instead of seeing the same lingering stuff, let's make adjustments if it's not working. And they did. And it was 2 absolute different ball games. Phenomenal to see. And now in just 9 games as a Kentucky head coach, Mark Pope's got 2 top 10 wins under his belt. Neither of them came at Rupp Arena. That's a crazy stat. And the first coach to do that in that short of time at Kentucky was Adolph Rupp. The guy's name's on the building. So it's a good company to be with. And Mark Pope's, we wondered the same line that we keep hitting of never won a tournament game. If can he win these big games? He's 2-0. I know you got to kind of take in the other hand, the Clemson loss, but you can make an argument that I said last week it was Kentucky's game to lose. Clemson didn't really win that. Kentucky kind of beat themselves. You have that crazy road environment. It's their first test. I mean, that's going to happen at some point. But, if we asked it, I think we kind of had the question of you have these 3 games, Clemson, Gonzaga, Duke. You win 2 of them, you feel pretty comfortable. But what if you win the 2 of the hardest? Duke and I'm taking it. I'm okay with that. If you can beat Duke and Gonzaga and you got to trade that for a Clemson loss, I'll take it. I would take it 10 times over. So things are still good, even at 8-1.
Yeah, this is the second best possible outcome. Of course, the first being winning all 3, but this is definitely second best. While we're kind of on the topic still of this game and the halftime adjustments, I was looking at the box score itself before this, and they made that adjustment on the defensive end, kind of running that hybrid man to 1-3-1 zone. But I also saw that they took 17 threes and made only 5 in the first half. And they reduced that down to 7 total threes in the second half and making only 2 of them. So, this team typically, they haven't been the past 4 games, but, they really prioritize that 3-point shooting. That's the primary form of their offense. But, we saw this game that they made that adjustment, forced it inside some more, drew some fouls, shot 15 of 15 on the free throw line up until they missed their last 3 most important free throws, but that's all right. But yeah, I mean, it's nice to see that we're not only making adjustments on the defensive end, but also on the offensive end and really finding something to get flowing.
Yeah. Andrew Carr looking good too. Making some big plays in the second half. We talked about big plays in that Duke game. He didn't do a ton in the Clemson loss, so he's another X factor for sure.
Yeah, Andrew Carr, like you just said, in Clemson, I'm not to going off bets and stuff, but like he was not a factor in Clemson. That was one of his worst games of the year. At Duke, he's been a liability on defense, but against Duke, that offensive run he had in the second half, all those and ones, it fueled the team, and he did the same thing against Gonzaga. I mean, I hate that he didn't show up against Clemson, but he showed up when it mattered. And again, we're still getting wrecked with our physicality on defense, just in the paint, specifically protecting the rim. That's a big concern. We ain't fixed that yet. We've got a long season, but that's got to get addressed really soon. But thankfully, in this round that we didn't have in Clemson was the offense from Andrew Carr. I was looking at the box score just now. Brandon Garrison had 10 points. I do not remember that being the case.
And Carr missed those 2 free throws at the end, which could have killed you. I mean, you could have lost the game right there, but he should have had 2 more points there. So problems.
I was sitting there and I sat there, watching TV, just pacing. I was like, I just felt like he was going to miss those 2. And then he went out and actually missed them. I was like, what are you doing? They're going to go down and hit the shot. And then, man, he's the one that had the tip and stop the ball. But, man, you got me scared a little bit there, Andrew Carr. But other than that, man, he was great. But you got to hit those 2, man. You're a veteran.
Broadcasters always jinx. Of course, I'm glad Kentucky pulled this up. But, they're sitting there talking all along about how Gonzaga is 175-0 when it comes to leading more than double digits at the half. And then how it was before we had missed our last 3, so we were 15 of 15, and they were talking about how perfect we were from the free throw line that night. And of course, we go to miss our next 3. It's always somehow broadcasters are always jinxing the teams out there. I feel like they just kind of need to keep their mouth shut, never talk about records.
Yeah. And then I was looking at kind of before the AP poll came out today. I was trying to get my thoughts ready of where I thought we were going to be ranked. Looking at before I put that out this morning and they announced it. looking at kind of all the other blue bloods, and I'm gonna include UConn. Not everybody has to agree, but I'm gonna include them right now. They've won 5 titles in the last 25 years.
For sure.
They've made their case. But Duke currently has 2 losses. Kansas has 2 losses. UConn has 3, and North Carolina has 4. Kentucky's got 1, man. You couldn't ask for better. I mean, you want to win the Clemson, but like you couldn't. Things are rolling right now, and Mark Pope's, just things are rolling with Kentucky. It's a good times to be a Kentucky fan, and I just hope this keeps going, man.
Yeah, and I know. I mean, I'm definitely upset to see Duke's won over UK, but their 2 losses come from like a super close game against Kansas, and of course the super close game against us. So they played well in those losses. It's still. I would still, put Kentucky over them, but we're pretty close with them. But still, I think we get that 1 up on them just from beating them.
Yeah. And then I was kind of at first a little angry about it. I'm like, you beat Duke. Why are you not 4th and 5th? But you got to also, after some time thinking about it, we're gonna include the Clemson loss in that mix. That hurts us as well. We got a really mid to bad loss and then a really, really great win. I could see how you just you stay in the same spot. Well, we end up dropping just 1, almost staying neutral. So after some time thinking about it, I was okay with it.
Yeah. And I'm actually kind of glad to see Clemson is ranked. They're 16th, kind of hoping they build their way up to be top 10 so that loss doesn't look as bad on us later down the road.
Yeah, and I don't really care, about the poll. There like a million teams lost, right? Like 6 to the top 10, right? So it made sense. Kansas lose twice, right? So court storm twice. That's a heck of a week. So, the poll, it is what it is. But I just want to see this team playing some more big games, and they're going to get it in conference play, obviously. 9 teams, 9 SEC teams in the top 25. So they should have no problems this week. I don't know. I don't know if Louisville's going to, be able to have a chance in this game at Rupp because these guys just light it up at Rupp. So I foresee that being a pretty comfortable UK win. And then outside of that, you got Ohio State. That's going to be a win, right? Probably. So they're looking pretty good going into SEC play.
Yeah, they got Bradshaw back now, so we get to see the former Cat up there when we're up there.
No point shaving?
Hey, I still don't know what happened with that, so I'm not going to speak on it.
Hey, one more thing real quickly on that. Most of the time, AP polls are meaningless. It's just something to get people riled up to keep the things going. But there is one little nugget that came out of it today. Shirley Donovan put out a stat. It says over the last 20 years, the last 20 NCAA champions in college basketball have all been ranked for the Week 6 AP poll. History tells us if you're not ranked in that Week 6 AP poll, you're not winning a title. It's happened 20 years in a row, at least. And so now with this, we've got Tennessee, Auburn, Iowa State, Duke, Kentucky, Marquette, Alabama, Gonzaga, Florida, Kansas, Purdue, not Arkansas, and Oregon. So, Kentucky's on that list too. That's where you want to be. You don't want to be the other schools off it. None of y'all caught me saying Arkansas wasn't on there. Didn't get any applause for that. But I don't know. If you're going to get any value out of the AP poll, there you go. But other than that, it is meaningless.
Yeah, there's no real way to tell, but just superstition and, trends that are a little far-fetched. But, yeah, if it instills any sort of confidence in this fan base, then so be it.
Yeah. Michael, I like your Christmas tree back there. Looking good.
I got a Buffalo Trace.
Oh, yeah.
That's a recent addition right here.
I can't see it.
Can you not see it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
Sorry, I'm like my phone's glitching, but yeah, you see it?
Looking good.
Yeah. So you're gonna pop that open come New Year or like day after Christmas?
Of course, I got to get my
Michigan State.
There we go. Go green, baby.
Michael, I absolutely love the colored lights. I've always had an opinion of the colored lights are so much better than the traditional white light.
Oh man, absolutely. People will do like blue Christmas, red Christmas, white Christmas, like have color themes and everything. Just go with the variety, man. That's what gives it that gingerbread house vibe. Childhood, nostalgic. I'm multicolored lights all day.
Yeah, I love the sorry, it keeps buzzing. My phone keeps buzzing. But the yeah, I hadn't really gotten into Christmas spirit yet. Been busy with the football, basketball overlap. You know, the UK football finally ended, and then high school football just ended this past weekend. Sayre got the state title. Franklin County lost, which was tough, but it was busy. So like I hadn't really gotten into Christmas spirit at all. But now this weekend I was able to relax a little bit and put the tree up. So you guys got your trees up or no?
Yep. We got ours up this past week. I was gonna say also like the little mini hoop you got on there at the front door. Like if you see our living room, you know, my fiance is the one who's responsible for most of the decorations, but we have vaulted ceilings, so I put up one little mini hoop on the wall, and it's like 8 foot tall, and it's pretty fun to mess around with every now and then.
For sure.
Hey,
Yeah, I got some old signs like from March Madness.
oh, nice.
Media refreshment. I don't know if I got some bourbon over here.
Nice.
Little Maker's Mark. So I'm just giving you guys the tour here. But yeah, I'm used to being in the FOC conference room because I'm working all the dang time. But yeah, the Metropolitan on Tate's Creek. It's a good spot. If you want to, anyone out there looking for a place to live, let me know. I'll refer you. Get a $500 off my rent. Would love that for a month. So let's go.
Nice.
Might be able to be neighbors with the Michael Epps as well. You know.
Hey, so it had me think. I was asking somebody this the other day. Do you all have? I'll tell you mine and give you an example. But do you all have? I want you to think about any Christmas traditions that really you're confident only you or your family did that other people didn't that you really found value in. So I'll tell you what mine to get you thinking. Growing up, this is a true story. My Christmas tree, my parents were together until I got to middle school. The Christmas tree was always the ornaments were toys. Like you think you like a Happy Meal toy, a little Hot Wheels, a little action figure, all these little toys that I would collect. I was big on the toys when I was a child, and we would drill a hole in them and hang them up as ornaments. And the tree was covered in Disney, Nickelodeon, all these shows. And then the topper was off of Toy Story, Woody. It was my Woody. And I thought everybody did that. And I thought we had the coolest tree, but I thought everybody had the same thing. And then when I got old enough to start going to friends' house and other places, I'm like, why doesn't everybody have toys on the tree? They just have these traditional ornaments. And I was like, these people are so weird. And then I realized I was the weird one. But it's one of the things that my mom's done since I was little, and I'm going to do with my children. And it's really cool as a child. It's like every toy you could dream of all the shows and movies. And that was our weird, but in my opinion, a really, really cool tradition that I don't think anybody else did.
I don't think we have too much of like a tradition that's out there. You know, there's a few little things that we'll do. My family has always like recorded things. We have these family movies, we call them, on DVD that we'll always throw on the TV and kind of have played in the background while we open presents. But I like to think that that's where my interest in cameras and everything stemmed from, was just, you know, always being around them, I guess, and watching those films and tapes and everything growing up. But that, and I mean, you know, as everybody's become 21 now, of course, we have mimosas and cinnamon rolls, and then yeah, so I mean that's really just kind of a few of the little traditions that we got going on, not anything out there.
The family mimosa morning, that's got to be electric. I'm a fan of that.
Any arguments come from that? Any like you know that family, like your sister-in-law or aunt, and any arguments started with some mimosas in them?
No, not yet.
That's funny.
No, I would go out to New York growing up. My grandmother living out there, we would spend Christmas out there. But now we just home, nothing much really. I think growing up, we always read The Night Before Christmas together as a family. That was great. But the Christmas tree, I don't know. We definitely have like unique ornaments. So I don't know if I could go as far as you, Trace, of like specific toys, but like my parents got me like a Anchorman ornament when I was like probably like freshman year of high school or whatever, when I like first started to want to get into like sports TV. So that was cool. And just like Hot Wheels on the Christmas tree. So I can see where you're coming from. You're not weird there. Hot Wheels is great.
Yeah. But yeah, kind of reflect. It's easy to get off track with these things. Christmas, I can't believe it's how many days today is the 9th. So we're 20, how many days is that? 13, 15 days away, 16 days away. Did some math. I wasn't a math major. So Christmas is almost here. Got the New York trip coming up, going to watch Ohio State. Excited about that. I've not watched a whole lot of Louisville. I'm kind of skipping over Colgate, but not watched a whole lot of Louisville this year. I know they gave Duke a little run for their money the other night. And again, we're not used to Louisville being anything competitive over the last few years. So I'm kind of wondering, is Pat Kelsey and Louisville, like, are they, I don't know if I'd say good this year, but are they quality this year? I mean, have y'all kept up with them out really outside of that Duke game? I know they kept it close. It was within 10 until about the last few minutes. But
Yeah, I'm surprised they kept it as close as they did without Pryor. Him being that athletic, kind of stretch big. But I'm happy Louisville's doing good because I've always, liked for the rivalry to be close. I'm fine with, the back and forth wins every single year. And the past 3 years under Kenny Payne, was it 3 or 2? 3.
2.
Was it 2? Okay. So the past 2 seasons with Kenny Payne, was awful there. And so I'm, happy to see that they're doing good. I've said it before that I like Pat Kelsey. He's very enthusiastic. I love seeing that he's like out there on campus asking students, trying to get them fired up for the games. You can tell he really cares about the program and his job. And the relationship between Pope and Kelsey is something that you don't see too often. I feel like you don't see the two coaches interacting with each other much. But I think one of the two have said that, they're going to be getting along as long as they're not going up coaching against each other. Of course, I'll still kind of always have that Louisville hatred. I guess it's more so probably towards football more than anything. But I like Pat Kelsey and the program he's got going on around there.
Listen, I need that to end soon. I need Pat. I know Mark Pope's not going to do it, but I need Pat Kelsey to step up and say something, even if it's fake. Get something going. I feel like he could say on the other hand, I feel like he could say the most mean thing in the world, and Mark Pope's not going to like. He's just having a bad day or something like. But man, I miss the days that coaches were flipping us off, and you hated this other team, and it was just quite the atmosphere. But I think we are a little away from that now. These coaches are too nice.
Yeah, I don't know. First year for both too, so they don't want to ruffle too many feathers. They gotta, get their feet under them. But I mean, Louisville's good. You get that big win over Indiana Thanksgiving week. It's kind of like, all right, you've arrived. Fan base pumped up. So I feel like there hasn't been a ton of prep and like build up for this game yet because the Cats were getting ready for Gonzaga. So now this week, a lot of build up for the game. I'm sure Louisville fans are pumped, but I don't know if I see them coming in to Rupp and getting this win. I feel like the Cats just have too much talent and they play too well so far at home, but all these home games have been, to cupcakes. So this will be the first like test at home. So we'll see how they do, but I feel like the Cats are good at them.
Yeah. Kind of reflecting back one last trip with Kentucky of like their weaknesses and what we saw, our takeaways from the game is I think without, I've been wanting to see that guy that gets to the rim when the threes aren't falling. We saw that with Lamont Butler at Clemson, but now it still kind of blows my mind of how they pulled that win out because without Butler and Kirk Kriisa, that should be a guaranteed loss. But like kind of swinging this back, like you mentioned earlier, Jackson Robinson was great down the stretch. Otega Owe, again, phenomenal. I would argue he's the most – how do I word this? I don't know, earlier we said Lamont Butler, you need him the most. But, like, in terms of most talented and guy this draft stock's improved the most, Otega Owe has been phenomenal. I mean, I just predict him to be the MVP every single week, and he's proven us right plenty of times. I'm really impressed with Otega Owe.
Yeah, he's the most complete player. And he's the most assertive. Right, he gets the cup. Sometimes he's just like, I'm shooting this. Like this one's mine, and which you like. You need that. You can't have too many of those guys, but you also can't have none of them. Right, so it's good to have him. And that's what I'm saying. That Jackson's got to be one of those guys. Jackson's just got to be like, all right, this is mine. Like I'm getting these two here now. Like no one's stopping me. Let me go get this bucket for my team. And if he does that more, it'll take him and the whole team to another level. So. That's what I want to see more of. But Otega's that guy, man. He's assertive, and would love to see him, knock down some more threes. But in terms of, being a downhill scoring threat, he's there already. So and I like to see Carr, do more of that in that Gonzaga game. That's a good sign. So they got to score in the paint because they're not going to hit threes. They're not shooting mid-range shots. So if they're not going to nail their threes, they got to get in the paint and make something happen.
Well, without Butler and Kirk Kriisa, I think it seems all but true that it seems like Jackson Robinson is the point guard. I think Travis Perry is that second option of a point guard for the time being so thin in that room. And then Mark Pope said on his show tonight, the third guy that's been getting reps at point guard is Colin Chandler. I know that's a big drop off from Butler to Chandler, but let's assume going forward, Jackson Robinson's a point guard. I'm okay with it. I hope that makes him become. You almost have to become more aggressive. I know I felt like he hasn't been that guy because he's almost not as aggressive out to go get it. I feel like he can do it, but he almost got to have the momentum or something. I wish he'd just go out and take it. And I think if you're point guard, you got to be forced to do that now. You don't have a whole lot of choice. I love that we're back at Rupp for another non-conference easy guaranteed win to kind of get some more feel. One, it gives your guards some time to get healed up from their injury, but then you can get some more reps with. Assuming Butler's not going to be in the Colgate game, you'll get Robinson back. Let's see how he runs against a smaller opponent at point guard, and if Travis Perry can give him some breather here and there, just to see how it looks in a game that you're going to win. There's some comfort there. So Wednesday night will be a good factor to kind of get some more experience under your belt and see what this team has.
Yeah, and with Jackson, I feel like that second half you really saw just like I don't know if he's caring about too much about trying to get the other guys, open shots or open looks, whatever it may be. But he, kind of like what Michael was saying, had that more of like the Ortega mindset. Like, I'm going to go in, I want to get this bucket. There's two things that come to the top of my mind. I want to say it was like 3 minutes ago or something. He would drive in, kind of push that shoulder in and do like a little fadeaway, almost floater mid-range. And that was money those two times. I don't know if that's typically a shot that he has in this game, but if he can get that going and pretty consistent, then he's going to be getting in there and hopefully finishing that more often. And then he had those two like back-to-back passes across the court to the corner to Ortega, and then full court pass to Amari. And I think right then and there, I think everybody is like, okay, yeah, we need this guy running point guard more often than we have him doing right now.
One thing I really factored into what our production would be Kobe Brea. Like, he's not. One thing I really watched in the Duke game, I'm like, we've got to have him getting 2 or 3 made 3-pointers a game, 5 minimum attempts, and they were absolutely face guarding him, locking him down. Like Kobe Brea's biggest issue is he can't get a shot, he can't get open, and that's when at that point he's a liability on defense. Like, when they're locking him down, he's, in my opinion, not bringing a whole lot of value to this team. When I already factored in that he would be. So it's a little concern for me. I would like for them to still get him looks coming off a pick and just shoot it real quick, because they're following him all over the court. They know what he can be. So I'd like to see that a little bit more. Again, it really concerns me that our threes aren't falling. I'm kind of just, we're still winning, kind of putting it to the side a little bit, but like, I would hate for us to be a team that hits 15, 18 3-pointers at home, and then you go on the road and hit 6, That's a strength of our team. And then we've got to find a way to get that on the road. I don't know the answer to that, but it does concern me. And then our physicality on defense. I think Garrison's bringing valuable minutes here and there. I think Amari Williams is that guy to be your most protective around the rim. But again, still weaknesses that I'm concerned about going forward. I don't know the answers for him just yet.
Yeah, well, maybe here more often we'll start to see some zone coverage going on out there, that really worked against Ike and Gonzaga. But kind of going back to what you said about Kobe, it's pretty obvious that he's one of the priorities on their scouting report. I feel like, they really go into practice and simulate how they're going to guard him. And it could, I don't know anything about it, but, where he's being face guarded all the time, not expected to get an open shot. Whenever he's finally had that open shot, he's like, oh shit, I've got an open shot. Like, probably starts thinking about it a little too much. And, that might be why we're kind of starting to see him miss a little more. And I know he was shooting like an outrageous 68% or whatever at the beginning of the season. And there was no way he was going to keep that up for the whole season. So we're going to see that come down a little bit, but he definitely needs to try to get out there and hit more of those open shots, because we're not really seeing those start falling at all.
Yeah. That 1-3-1 defense that we put out there, Gonzaga scored 50 at halftime, 50 in the first 20 minutes. They scored, I think it was 15 points in the first 13 minutes of the second half. Like, absolutely, it worked. But the stats show you. They scored 50 and then 13 in that short of time. It was. I hope we stick with it in those situations. I know we've got it in our playbook now to roll out there. So that's glad we got to see it and it worked. But yeah, I mean, that's about as, unless Michael, you got more to add on it. That's as much as, to kind of recap on the Gonzaga win. It's a big deal. It's a very big deal. That will be when you're looking at your seeding come March and they're showing that your notable wins, that and Duke obviously are going to be on there, but you could make the argument that the Gonzaga one was more impressive. I mean, especially when you factor in the halftime comeback without your 2 point guards. It's a home game for them. You're in Seattle, man. You won't convince me otherwise. And a lot of things that I had to take in my perceptive of it today is like you just think, oh, it's a cross country, and you just don't really take into what that really means. But I sat there and got on a map today on my phone and zoomed out, and like when you sit there and think about how actually far that is across the country, far away you are from your home and your fan base, and you still win that, it's super impressive. Big time win. That's all. I mean, that's all I can say about it, man. Keep going out there and doing that. And for, as we mentioned earlier in this, we're going to have Jeff Goodman in the next segment. So he'll be on here in just a minute. So we'll get his thoughts on the game. The national media are really praising Kentucky right now. And it's really cool to get his perspective that we're going to have coming up because they knew Mark Pope really, really well. They interviewed him this summer before Kentucky was even an option for him about with BYU and their success. So they're going to have some great takes on Mark Pope, his personality. They've had him on his podcast already this season. I'm excited to hear what he has to say.
And I know Goodman has a good relationship with Kerr Kreese as well. So you might be able to get a little bit more insight, see if he's learned anything else about Kerr and his injury.
Yeah. Michael, you got anything else to add before you hit the night on the town?
Man, no town. We got Bengals on Monday Night Football. I guess I got to tap in with them. But they're cooked. So, I've got I think Colby's doing the Colgate game, and then I'll be at the Louisville game. So awesome. I'll see you boys there.
Yes, sir. Well, we'll wrap this one up, and we'll segue into our part 2. But for right now, that's all from us. Michael, Tim, I appreciate you guys. We'll see y'all later. Welcome back, guys, to the second part of our Cats Coverage Basketball podcast. Me, Michael, and our producer, Tim, just gave all of our thoughts on Kentucky, Gonzaga, Kentucky, Clemson, what's coming with Kentucky and Louisville. But now we've been joined by, thankfully, Jeff Goodman, co-founder of the Field of 68, formerly with ESPN, college basketball 24 hours of the day. Jeff, thanks for joining, man. How are you?
I'm good. It's finally nice to, I think, get along with Kentucky, Big Blue Nation, or at least a portion. I know not everybody likes me, but like I feel like now, I don't know, maybe it's just the Cal thing. I wasn't on the best terms with John Calipari for his entire tenure, really, even before he got to Kentucky. I don't think it really affected how objective I was. Some people would beg to differ. But obviously I've got a good relationship with Mark Pope and their staff and some of the players there. So I always had a good relationship with most of the players actually at Kentucky. My relationship with Cal never affected my relationship with, I don't think, any of the players.
Yeah. I'm glad that you bring that up because that's one of the questions I wanted to ask you is I remember you all interviewing Mark Pope. I think it was a couple of weeks before the Kentucky thing even became a thing. And you all had him, I think, reflecting on his season at BYU and the success. Can share as much as you want. Can you talk about your just personal relationship with him? I'm sure you've known him for all these years before Kentucky was even in the vision there.
Yeah, I have. I've known Pope for a while, dating back when he was an assistant for Mark Fox. Then obviously head coach at Utah Valley and BYU. I was up there last year for practice at BYU, and I've been blown away. Even the long conversations I've had with him over the years. Just how much. Number one, I think how hard a worker he is because a lot of the former NBA guys, and Mark Pope's not your traditional NBA guy of like, who's made 100 million, right? Like he made very little money in the NBA. So, but he's a grinder. I mean, he is an absolute grinder when you talk to people that were close with him, that worked on staff with him. Mark Fox, who hired him obviously out of med school, and some of those people. That's the one thing that kind of surprised me a little bit that I didn't know. Number two, like just how uh, no BS with Mark Pope. Like not a lot. I say it like he's kind of the opposite of Calipari in a lot of ways, right? Like Cal is I've said it for years, like he's a used car salesman. And that's what makes him a great recruiter, right? Like he does it that way and it works for him. Um, Mark Pope isn't like that. Like you just feel like I always felt like whatever Cal was telling me, I felt like I needed to flip it. I did. He's not the only one. There's other coaches like that in the industry, but I felt like whatever he said, there was a method to his madness. And you'd ask him questions in post game press conferences. Whatever you asked him, it didn't matter. He answered what he wanted to answer, right?
Yeah.
Like Mark Pope is all up. I guess, okay, to boil it down simply, I feel like John Calipari is about himself and Mark Pope is all about the players.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the funny thing to say that, Jeff, like Cal would have his assistants do the weekly availabilities for us on the beat. And so we do Chin and Orlando and Ulyss, but now Pope is doing it every week,
Yep.
and he's giving these thoughtful answers, which is, he came in and did one-on-one sit-down interviews with some of the TV stations. You could tell right away. It's like, all right, he knows how to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it just doesn't come across as bullshit. It comes across as real. Like, one of the things that even after Champions Classic, right? He brings in Andrew Carr next to him. And Andrew Carr says, all right, basically, I'm going to make the opening statement. And I'm like, man, I've been doing this for 25 years. I've never seen that before, where the coach will always make the first statement. And Cal would make it and go on for 5 minutes, about whatever he wanted to talk about. And Mark Pope just sat there and listened to Andrew Carr say, like, this is how we felt about the game. And again, I think there's a level there of wanting to lead a different way and really wanting to, help these kids. And not that Cal doesn't. I think Cal does a great job helping and preparing his kids for life and for the NBA and all that. I do. I think he's a better X's and O's guy than people give him credit for. And again, he'll hold kids accountable. I just think Pope, again, to boil it down, is just unselfish. He gets it. There's not a lot of sales in Mark Pope. And his offense is really pretty to watch when John Calipari's is not.
Yeah. Jeff, I think another good word that we've been using around, I don't know how far this is made nationally, but around the region it has here around Lexington, a breath of fresh air. As we was just going through, we actually made me think all three of us were in that Auburn press conference last year when he came out and let us all have it. And then I think we lost the next few games. But anyways, we would be sitting in post-game press conferences and I could script what he was gonna say, and like you would ask him about such and such, and he would end about talking about Brad Calipari, and like you got nowhere with these press conferences. They were so stale, and we are also in the honeymoon phase where we understand that everything's perfect right now in the Kentucky basketball world. We're aware of that, but Mark Pope, I mean, he gives the effort. Just the other night, I don't know how far this made it either. He had to leave his post-game radio show after the game early to go. He said to go do some scouting. It was like 11 o'clock at night. There was like 400 to 500 fans staying because they did it for Cal too, not as much. And he bought everybody ice cream, and Rep Fina's for their ice cream, and he bought all of them. And he said in it a couple days later when he talked on his weekly radio show, he's like, Rep Fina didn't give me any discount on that, but it was worth it. He said probably over $2,000 on ice cream. So just little things like that. It's and then back to the X's and O's, we saw that halftime adjustment. I'd like to get in that Gonzaga game, down 16 at halftime. Brought out the 1-3-1. Gonzaga scored 50 in the first half, and in that first 13 minutes of Gonzaga in the second half, they only scored 15 points. Two ball games where at halftime I was sitting there with the people around me because I didn't make the game either and said, like, we're losing this game. But I've not been accustomed to halftime adjustments over the last few years, so I'm wired to think a certain way, and it was so relieving to see that actually take place.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, understanding that what's not working and we got to try something different. Where some coaches, will just stick with their guns and this is what we're going to do. This is what we do. And I like Pope's staff as well. I do. And you look at Cal bringing back like Kenny Payne. And it's like, listen, everybody likes Kenny as a guy, but like it was the biggest disaster at Louisville for 2 years. Like, why are you bringing him back on staff? Like, you need something different. You don't want to surround yourself with yes men. You don't want to surround yourself with the same guys that, frankly, since John Robick left, have they had a really good X's and O's assistant coach?
Yeah. No, John
No,
Rogan
they
was a
have
big
not.
deal.
Right.
And Welsh was too.
Yeah.
Him leaving this summer and Orlando leaving this summer were very big tellers there.
Yeah, I just think, Pope, there's not that ego. There's not that ego to say, hey, you know what? I suck tonight. Like, I think he's very self-aware, where I think Cal was at one point, but I think he lost that. I think he lost his self-awareness and was too far removed from, honestly, the people of Lexington. Like, maybe some of the big money people he was still talking to, but like people didn't see him out anymore.
Oh,
They saw him out those first, 5, 10 years. He loved it. He loved the adulation, everything like that. The last five, he didn't want to go out anymore. And I think he realized, talking to somebody close to him coming out of the pandemic, he realized too, like, maybe I don't have to work that hard anymore, with the pandemic and doing these Zooms and everything like that. And he's not alone in this. He's
yeah.
not alone. There are other coaches that kind of change and have gotten older and don't have the same drive. Mark Pope again was at, Utah Valley and then BYU for a few years. This is home for him. This is an opportunity of a lifetime. You could see it, and he feels an obligation to Big Blue Nation.
Yeah.
Like Cal didn't feel an obligation. Like he wanted to win a championship. He knew he could recruit anybody in the country to Kentucky, but it wasn't like he felt this pressure and an obligation because he's one of them. And
Yeah.
that's what Mark Pope is, and that's what the connection is both ways ultimately.
I think we saw, and Michael, jump in here any second you want, but we saw there was an article that put out this summer at Cal apparently told a recruit that, we're just moving shop to Arkansas. It's Cal, almost like Cal University. And I think he understood that Kentucky was the brand, but like after so many years, he got in that throne and got comfortable and didn't have to work as hard. And I think, Mark Pope's been centered around this year of Kentucky's team. That's what they've been calling it, all about the front of your jersey, just a total turnaround. And as a Kentucky fan, I've been born here. I've lived here all my life. You feel like you got your program back. And again, I grew up with Cal. He was my hero at one point in time when I was a child. I don't
Sure.
hate the guy, but I remember in 2021 leaving a game at Rupp, and I was telling another guy in media, I was like, I hate to say this because he's our coach. I truly feel like the game's passed Cal by. He's not adjusting to the current times. And I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I really do feel like the game's passed him by, and I don't see any success but another first round exit for him again. And I hate that because at one point in time I really cared about the guy when I was a child.
I mean, listen, he was so good again for a 10-year stretch. I mean, you look at what he did following, bully Clyde Gillespie, and he saved you guys. He did. I mean, he didn't just save you guys. I mean, everything was about John Calipari in Kentucky or Duke and Mike Krzyzewski for a decade. And yeah, I don't think he's adjusted well to not even the new climate. It's more of, again, adapting on the court for him. Like off the court, he's still going to get good enough players. Although I'm not sure they evaluate like they used to. I think part of the deal was obviously you had these elite players years ago that, they could handpick for a while, right? I mean, after you brought John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins and some of those guys over, you got momentum, and then you were able to handpick, and eventually Duke kind of fought you and won some battles, but it was 1A and 1B. And now I think with NIL, it's different, right? I mean, it's different. You're gonna, AJ DeMonsa is, and I don't know when we're running this, but he's making his decision here. And he's going to choose between, BYU and Alabama. I mean, think about that, guys. Think about the fact that, like, yeah, Duke's not involved, Kentucky's not involved, Arkansas is not involved for these kids, and a lot of them are that way right now because, frankly, NIL is everything. And Cal's got NIL. Like, listen, and Pope has NIL, not as much as Cal, but it's getting the right kids. It's getting the right kids right now, especially when you're in the portal as much as you are, finding the kids that are, that are going to be in for the right reasons, right? I mean, you look at Reed Shepherd, what he was like last year. I mean, like Reed Shepherd was all in for the right reasons. We know that. Like, didn't matter if he made $1 or $1 million. He was going to play the exact same way. Is that the case now? Like, I think Pope did a good job for the most part of recruiting high character kids this year. I know Calipari brought in Janelle Davis, who had his issues last year at FAU, but I thought he'd figure it out with Janelle Davis. He hasn't yet. The other part with Cal, it's twofold. I mean, you guys know this. Like, for years, he didn't have shooters.
Yeah.
Didn't have shooters. Like, you get whoever you want. You first of all, you're in Kentucky. You're in Kentucky, the land of the shooter, right? Indiana and Kentucky, two states that have no shortage of shooters within the confines of the state. And then number two, like, you look at his team now, he doesn't have a point guard. Like, Boogie Fland's not really a point. I know people push back at me. I remember last year, I said this last year, that they didn't really have a point guard. And they kind of did. Reed Shepard was, but not really your traditional point. He was a ball mover. But people were trying to fight me in the Bahamas. One media guy, I don't even remember his name, but one dude specifically who fought me that, like, DJ Wagner was a point guard. I'm like, come on, man. Like, I've seen DJ Wagner play 100 times. He is the furthest thing from a point guard. I don't care what the assist numbers tell you. He is not a point guard. He is not a good ball mover, and he is an overrated player. And, again, like, I don't know, man. I just there's a lot of things, you got to adapt. And ultimately, again, I think staff is an issue. I don't think Cal works like he used to. Listen, it's a win. It's obviously a big win for you guys right now. Now, again, we don't know what Mark Pope's going to do, but to have wins over Duke in a neutral court and in Seattle against Gonzaga, you couldn't have written a better script to start out your Kentucky coaching career than what Mark Pope has done so far.
Yeah, Jeff. I know the luster is gonna fade. It could fade for Cal real quick, and it could fade for Pope real quick. I mean, I get on Trace and Tim a lot. I'm from Michigan State. I went to Michigan State from Michigan, so I'm not a UK fan. So I'll rip them from time to time, and I know Pope's got this year, right, and he's got a big recruiting class coming in next year. Yeah. But this will fade real quick, and they could run him out of town in a few years if he doesn't get it the first weekend. I mean, he still hasn't won an NCAA tournament game, so we'll see how it goes. But for this team, I mean, I think I've been telling them for a couple of weeks, Jackson Robinson's the guy. Like, he's this X factor. You got to get him going. He's got to be as assertive as Otego away and just go out there and be 20 points in his sleep like they kind of said he could be this offseason when he was flirting with the NBA. And so he kind of showed it in that Gonzaga game. The Duke game, he only gets 1 point. So it's good to see him wake up. Do you feel like that's something that could, just become a regular, or is it something that might still be a little inconsistent?
I mean, it was inconsistent in the Gonzaga game, right? He was terrible in the first half and terrific in the second half. So, like, yeah, he's got to be more consistent. That's the bottom line. Like, he's been a good player for them so far, but he's not what any of us anticipated. We felt like, I think all of us felt like he'd be your go-to guy. He'd be the guy you put the ball in his hands at the end of a game and go make a play. And that really hasn't been him. It's been more of an overall effort, right? Oweh's been good. Lamont Butler's been better when healthy offensively than I think, certainly that I thought. Kobe Brea struggled a little bit, obviously, last game, but he's going to make shots. And, you wonder what that front court, is. Obviously, I think Andrew Carr is going to be solid. He was so good in the Champions Classic, especially down the stretch in the game against Duke. It's funny. I said it going into the season. I'll say it again. Like, I don't think the disparity from 1 to 10 it's probably as minimal as it's been on this Kentucky roster, maybe ever. I mean, that's how crazy it is if you look at it when they're healthy and they get Creasa and, Colin Chandler comes along maybe. I don't think there's a dude on this team. I think there's a bunch of good players.
Jeff, I want to get your thoughts on, like, if you were forming up a scouting report, especially someone who's not looking for all the goods. Like, as a Kentucky fan, I wanted the team to be the best way possible. But you take a neutral stance because I don't assume you're not a Kentucky fan like I am. And so
I'm not, but I got my hat. You guys saw me in my hat the other day. Did you see me in this?
That made it.
What do you think? You like it or no?
Yeah, I like it. That made its rounds around Twitter last night or Saturday night.
I mean, like, So I was in Charleston last year, and we were just walking down the street, and I saw it in the front window, and I'm like, oh man, I gotta have that. Like these fans are gonna go crazy if they see my dumb ass put this thing on.
That's so
And
random for Charleston too. Like,
what's that?
it's just random. Charleston. That's where
Like
you
it
find
was
it.
just this like sports. It wasn't even all sports. It's like retro jackets and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And I just saw it. I'm telling you, saw it in the window. I'm like, I'm in. And I looked at my wife, and my wife's like, no, you can't buy that. I'm like, oh yeah, I can.
that's fine. So one thing I've been saying all season is I feel like one of our biggest weakness, if not the biggest, is our physicality on defense. I feel like we're just getting ate alive at the rim. No post protection. Andrew Carr's been great on offense, but he's given up a lot of points. Amari Williams is good here and there. He's probably our best option. What is that a fair statement? What would you think is Kentucky's biggest weakness at this time?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of them. Again, I think going back to my last statement, about having a dude, a go-to guy that instead it's almost like it might depend on matchups as much as anything at the end of the game. But yeah, Amari Williams, it's funny because everybody was like raving about Amari when they got him in the portal. And I talked to a bunch of coaches from the CAA, and they were like, he's good. Like he's going to be a good player, but like good passer, like not a guy that you're really going to throw it into in the post in the SEC and get a lot out of. He'll be fine. He'll be solid, but again, they pay these big guys a lot of money in NIL. I'm not sure they're quite worth it. Now, better they got him than kept Ugana and Yensu, who was making a ton of money over at Kansas State and not really getting in the court more than 5 minutes a game.
Yeah.
So it's worked out better. Again, I just think it's power in numbers. It's power in numbers. And I like the mix too. Like he went heavy transfer this year. I think next year, it looks like some more high school guys. And obviously you bring Perry and Colin Chandler, they'll be back, I would assume for sure, and be better next year. But you went old this year because this is the year to do it more than ever, the last year of the COVID year. Next year, the gap will shrink a little bit more. So freshmen, and this year's freshman class, way better. Like I'm trying to do a little bit of a study now of like what the numbers are for these top 50 freshmen this year through the first 10 games to a year ago. It's not even close. But next year, without the COVID kids getting the extra year, you're going to have freshmen make even more of an impact. So I like what Pope has done there. He'll mix in some, if you get top 50 freshmen, I still think you want to do that and try to build from within a little bit and develop guys. It's hard to keep them. That's the only hard part. If you don't play them, it's really hard to keep them. But I like the mix of if you could have like my ideal would be, okay, retain 4 of your top 8 guys. Retain 4 of your top 8 if you can. Um, and then you want like a mix of like, I don't know, probably bringing in maybe 4. So you keep 4, you bring in 4 transfers, and then maybe you have 4 high school kids, on your roster, maybe, 3 or something like that. You don't really need more than 11 guys right now. I don't think those last couple spots. I'm not sure you even want to fill them. A lot of coaches don't even want to deal with it because they know they're just going to get unhappy players. You got to find the right guys. I don't think Duke has more than, I don't know, 10 guys right now in scholarship on their team. Man, maybe they do. They got a couple freshmen that aren't really playing.
Yeah, what would you say is also on the kind of flip side of things? What's been the biggest surprise for you with this Kentucky team? If an individual player or just overall, I mean, could you have seen them knocking out Duke and Gonzaga? I don't think I would have predicted it.
No, hell
Biggest,
no.
yeah, what would be your biggest surprise?
Yeah, I mean it's winning both those games, coming back against Gonzaga, a team that again returned the majority of its team, and that's why they've come out of the gates as well as they did. The good thing is there's just not a dominant team this year, and we say it kind of every year. Even a couple of years ago, we said it, and then UConn became a dominant team, and last year UConn was a dominant team again, kind of became it quicker. I just don't see it this year. Now maybe somebody will emerge, maybe Alabama. Chris Youngblood's coming back here in the next week or so, probably against Creighton Saturday, and he'll give him a huge lift. I think Alabama has probably the most depth and talent combined, maybe of anybody. Duke can get there, but that's the beauty this year is like to me, if you've good chemistry You've depth. You can withstand an injury like Kirk Reese going down here for the next month or so. I think Lamont Butler's been a pleasant surprise for me offensively. I think that's another one that to me again. And listen, I love Ortega. I saw him in AU. I think he's an MFer. I love that pickup. That pickup was terrific. I was just worried about Lamont Butler and whether he was going to be a liability in the offensive end, and he has not been that yet.
Yeah, Jeff, I've been telling these guys like teams that only rely on threes never win national titles. Never ever happens. You go year by year, UConn, Kansas, doesn't matter, never happens. And so this, all these games at Rupp where they're just hitting all these threes, like it's great, but then you look at the Duke game, they're not hitting their threes, down double digits in the second half. They get inside, right? Get in the paint, you get some M1s with Carr and Butler and Amari finally gets like a touch around the rim, which, he misses at times. He doesn't have a great touch, but maybe it'll come. So it seems like that's what they're going to have to do if they're not hitting their threes. And we kind of saw it in the Gonzaga game too. But they didn't do it in the Clemson game, right? They're not hitting their threes. They couldn't get inside and you lose that game. So I just wonder, the threes are so much fun, but you just can't rely on it in March, and certainly not in SEC play where this conference is so tough. So I wonder what it's going to look like if this continues, right? If they still can't get over the hump of like 10 plus made threes a game, which is what they want if they want to shoot 30, right? So it's kind of difficult to judge so far.
Yeah, and again, Bray is their one guy that's like an elite shooter. They've got other good shooters, but I'm not sure they have another elite shooter. So, and I'm gonna flip this in you. I don't know if you guys talked about this already, but it's funny because before the season, if I had said to you guys, and you probably did it, but what would be a good year for Mark Pope? What would Big Blue Nation, what would fans, and I know you, Mike, you're not a Kentucky guy, so to speak, but you follow the program enough. If I said to you, they finished fourth in the SEC and won a tournament game, got out of the first round. Two, okay, get out of the first weekend.
You got to get out of the first weekend. It's a hump that these fans are so ticked off about, and it's like I come in here to start covering this team, and this is my fourth season, and I'm like, can you imagine if like me telling me coming in here in October 2021 with that tie Oscar Tshiebwe team that the next 3 years you're not even gonna get out the first weekend to cover? I'm like stunned. So I feel like that's mandatory, and in year two. Or I mean, with that team that he's got coming in, really has to sniff a Final Four. But this year, he's got to be out of the first weekend. And if they lose the first round, I mean, can you imagine
right.
that honeymoon's going to end real quick? But so I think second weekend. What do you think, Trace?
Yeah, I think Mark Pope has a little bit of a grace, especially how fast he had to put this team together. I think you have to win. I think if you don't make the tournament, there's no grace for that. This is Kentucky, and he said it himself. That's not acceptable. So first weekend for sure. I think a great would be 2 weekends. Anything else, more than we could imagine. I did just see we have a timer on here. It's got about 10 minutes. Jeff, I really wanted to throw some quick rundown questions at you. Maybe a minute answer or so, and it kind of goes over the whole Pope era since he's been here, getting your thoughts on some stuff that we've already long passed. I want to start off with that Mark Pope press conference back in April. Absolutely special. I don't know if it fully felt that way not being there in person, but I lucked out. I was as media. I was on the very front row, right in the middle. Had the literal best seat. It was a crazy moment. What's your thoughts on that press conference?
It was surreal to me. Like it was shocking. I didn't expect that. I didn't expect. I don't know. I mean, I think it just showed how ready they were for a change as much as anything, right? But I didn't realize how excited they would be for Mark Pope. Like, was it how excited they were for Mark Pope or how excited they were to say goodbye to John Calipari, or a combination?
I think it was a happy of both. I think it was a mixture of both.
Yeah. I was really, really blown away because I'm not sure I've ever seen anything like that ever in my career of doing this. And again, the stars were aligned for that one. You brought one of your own in, but like Indiana brought Mike Woodson in, and they've been terrible, and they didn't react like that to the hiring of Mike Woodson. But but I think Pope's energy too is so contagious.
Yeah. Our next question, I guess, just kind of leads right into it. That February matchup with Arkansas. Cal returns. There's not a trip to Fayetteville.
Yeah.
My opinion, biggest game in college basketball of the year, if not one of them. What's your thoughts on that crazy day that Lexington is just going to be through the roof?
So my dad's birthday is January 31st. He'll be down in Florida, and my plan is to try to get out later that night and come to the game. But I will say this, like, if Arkansas is not any good, I'm not sure I'm going to go to that game. Like, I don't know. I want to see how fans react to Cal, and he'll take the high road. I mean, he's not stupid. He will take the high road and thank people, and he's already done that, right? He's done it talking about Kentucky fans and his time in Lexington. He's smart enough to understand, like, the fans were good to him for the most part till the end, and he deserved it at the end. Not sure he understands that part, but he did. So I would say I want to be there. I think it'll just, don't you think it'll be 99% fans giving him a standing ovation?
No, I
You
don't.
don't?
No.
Really don't?
I really
Oh,
think
they're gonna boo him? Oh
Come
my
on.
god!
Really?
Oh, for sure.
Only
70-30.
because he's in the league?
No,
I
I'd
think
say
they boo him no
if he-
matter what.
70
You
30.
think they're going to boo his ass?
Oh my
I will
gosh!
bet
Really?
every dollar I make the rest of my life, there's going to be a thousand of them out of the 20,000. There's going to be a small section, but I'm going to bet going into 70-30, depending how much he softens up through his press conferences and stuff the week before. But yeah, I think it is. It's not, the fans are really like, they don't miss him, or they really don't.
But I'm not saying they're going to miss him, but you still have to appreciate what he did to make that program relevant as long as he did. Now, again, I know it wasn't good at the end, but I don't know, man. Like, if I'm a Kentucky fan at this point, I'm happy we got Mark Pope. I'm psyched. We're better than you guys are, most likely February 1st, I would think. I mean, Arkansas looks like garbage right now. Um, I don't know. I would think maybe it'll be the older fans that'll be a little bit more appreciative, and the younger fans will be the ones booing. I don't know. Listen, if you're right about that, Mike, man, I don't know.
I've
That would
talked to
surprise me.
I've talked to a lot of fans, just people in the community, and so many they were ready to get him out of town. I mean, and there were the fans that pushed him out of town, but so many of them were just happy that he was gone, and like just were
But he
ticked
never
off.
took shots. But he never took shots at Kentucky, and he hasn't, has he?
No, I
haven't
mean
seen
he
him.
kept talking about Kentucky like the few weeks and months after like his intro at Arkansas. He talked a lot about UK
Yeah.
and all that, which is great. Everything's been clean, but
Yeah.
it's also part of sports. You always boo the enemy, right? Like,
Yep.
well, it's nothing anywhere close to like LeBron going back to Cleveland, but it's like anyone returning, you get some boos. But the way that last year ended, where you really just like you're talking about in-game adjustments and you can't do anything with Jack Golke. And like you have this dream team with Reed Shepherd and Rob and like so much talent. That team had no business being anywhere short of the Elite Eight. And you go out there and do that. I think that was the final straw in this 4 straight years of not getting out of the first weekend. I guess 5, right? But then COVID didn't count. So they were ticked off, and they're like the ego. They're gonna boo
I just
him.
wonder, like, too, if Arkansas came in and they were running everything right now, then you'd be more pissed off. I almost feel like, too, if Kentucky fans are like, hey, you know what? We got the better coach. We got the better team. Yeah, like, he's not even a threat to us today. We're going to beat their ass.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It makes you a little nervous, though. Yeah,
No question. No question. Of course. In Arkansas, listen, we know his payroll might be number one in the country. NIL might be number one in the country. I think Kansas State or Arkansas are 1A and 1B. I think Kentucky's top 10 somewhere.
I do think they'll boo Boogie Fland when he's introduced, and they'll boo Billy. I don't know if Billy Richmond's even starting, but they'll boo him. Yeah, they'll boo Boogie for sure because they wanted him. A lot of fans were super excited about him being the next guard.
He's been great.
Guards sending all these guards to the league, so he was going to be the next guy there.
Jeff, real quickly, we've got 3 minutes before this ends. I want to real quickly. We're only 9 games into this. It's currently December 9th for anybody watching this. We're at this point in time, where are you projecting this Kentucky team to do from what we know so far?
Again, listen, they're gonna come down to earth a little bit. Okay, like anybody thinking they're gonna run through the SEC and win this league is out of their mind. Okay, like this is a good team that has gotten 2 wins that could have went the other way. They could have easily have lost both of those games. Let's be honest here. Their margin for error is not great. Um, Pope's done a great job with them. They've been able to win these close games at the end, which has been huge for them and will be important for them going forward. I would say if you were putting a gun to my head, I would say, they finished somewhere between 3 and 5 in the SEC and get to the second. I mean, it's hard to say with matchups.
Ooh.
But like, win a game or two. Win a game or two in the NCAA tournament. I would think. I don't think they'll get knocked in the first round. But I also don't see them as a Final Four team. I don't. But having said that, there just aren't a lot of teams that are overpowering at this point. So like, could they be a Final Four? Sure, of course. I mean, there's going to be a team that's in the Final Four, guaranteed. That's this year is one of those completely unexpected, maybe an FAU type team, just because, like I said earlier, there's no dominant team this year. So a lot of it's going to depend on health and matchups. The good thing is they have depth. They have a lot of depth. They can withstand injuries at almost every position, where there's a lot of teams that can't.
So we're going to close this one out. Michael, you got any last words before we close this out?
I think that's it. Just find other ways to score. The relying on threes isn't going to work, and it looks so much fun against Wright State and Bucknell, but that you can't do that in March. So I want to see those first couple weeks in the SEC. They got Florida right away, who's really good. I mean, Clayton and they came in the rut last year and won. So
Mike,
I think
Mike, here's my question: would you rather have Mark Pope's offense jacking threes, or would you rather watch Tom Izzo's offense where he doesn't even shoot threes?
God, the Jay Makins and Brick and Shot. They got some guys. They got Richardson, but yeah, that offense is painful. It's painful. But they had a good week last week. Probably
It's a little archaic. Would you admit,
two worst teams in the conference, but
yeah, he likes shooting contested twos. Tom
I'm so sorry to cut you off. We've got about 20 seconds. This thing's going to end. Jeff, thanks for hopping on. We appreciate y'all. Thanks for having us with the Field of 68 for another season. We'll have to have
you guys.
We'll have you back again sometime. So I appreciate you.
thanks a lot.